Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Power of Eight Book Club. Hello, my name is Pollyanna Blanco, and with me is Jennifer Smith. And today we're so happy that you're joining us. We're actually at chapter 13. I can't believe it, Jennifer.
I know. It's been great.
It's fabulous. And today's chapter is called Leaky Buckets. And of course, we're going to be talking about more than just the chapter. So stay tuned for that too. And we really encourage you, if you have questions or comments or anything you'd like to share in the chat, please do so. And if you're watching this on replay as well too, please, and you enjoy what we're sharing, please remember to like and comment on it, and we'll get back to you. We'll respond to your comments. So, because really this whole book is about the power of coming together and the power of really remembering that we're part of a larger interconnected, almost like an ecosystem, really, And so this chapter, one of the things that stood out in it for me is this. They continue to talk about the water experiments and the power of our intentions to affect water, which again, we are quite high water percentage beings, right? So again, this is like another great concrete example of how if we're, wanting to send positive intentions outside of us to a body of water like Lake Biwa in the chapter, it starts with also how our thoughts are affecting our own internal body of water. And so it was really interesting because what caught my attention, and we were talking about it in the last episode, so if you haven't had a chance to watch that, make sure you go back and watch that, where we were talking about holy water and what makes it holy, is how she talked about, and there's a quote here, I'm just going to pop into it, that she talks about the work that she found with, when positive intentions were set, and this was with a biologist by the name of Bernard Grad, and he had carried out a small experiment watering barley seeds with salt water, which ordinarily can stunt a plant's growth. However, he'd only watered the seeds after each vial of water had been held by one of the three people. And there was one man who had a green thumb. I thought that was neat. And two depressed patients. And the fastest growing plants had been watered by the green thumbed healer, followed by those watered by one of the depressed patients, who had nevertheless grown enthusiastic about the experiment, and the slowest growing plant that was watered by the vial held by the most depressed patient, started to shift. So there's like this interesting connection between our thoughts and how they impact our environment, both our internal environment and our external environment. So that's kind of what I felt guided to jump in with today. Jennifer, what stood out for you in this chapter?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's so important. And that was the first part of the chapter. That was the main thing that stuck out to me, is how the seeds would grow with someone who had the green thumb because of the positive intentions. And I think that's what we have sprinkled throughout all of our podcasts about how important our intentions are and what that does. And also what it does internally and externally for our world. So that's the main takeaway that I had gotten from the beginning part. You really think about this, and towards the end, though, some of the questions were, how do our thoughts affect water? Because they'd proven that with loving intention, water does change. They have scientific proven results how the pH would change by 1, and that's a scientifically statistics, but then there's statistical bounds of that, it's evidence scientifically. So I think that was the major science part to prove that out. But then one of the questions was how do our intentions, if we know it affects water, how does it affect our food? How does it affect when we're cooking our food and the intentions that are put in there? And I think it's also important if everything is done in the energy of love and abundance and good intentions, everything is much healthier for you.
Yes. It goes back to that old, expression about, that magic ingredient, that secret ingredient, which is love. You can taste it in
Mm-hmm.
the food when people care about what they're cooking. And some people really express themselves, their love through food too. I know my father was a cooking teacher, a foods teacher in the high school system here. And he was always giving us doggy bags. So whenever we come over just to pop in for a quick thing, he'd always offer to feed us. And that, so definitely, and extends beyond food as well too, right? In our day-to-day lives, if we're standing in the grocery store checkout line and we have a little bit of a moment to just, quietly send love or bless people, you know, it's this idea that I think a lot of people are awakening to now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more than even an idea. It starts as an idea that then it becomes an awareness when you start to discover how your day unfolds differently when
Mm-hmm.
you quietly within yourself place your focus on the love, on feeling the love, on sending the love, on looking for the love, on paying attention and being grateful for the love that's already present. And everything I've noticed in my own day, I'm curious about you, but I notice everything flows a lot more easily too. And there's a momentum in that. Have you noticed that as well too, Jennifer?
Yeah. I think if you go with your day in that sort of energy, it's like everything just lines up perfectly. You have to, it's almost like a light, like you have to touch everything just lightly. You have to be in this ease and flow and trust and follow your intuition. And it's like everything is just set up for us perfectly when we can be in that stream of ease and flow and trusting. Um, Sometimes our intellect gets in the way. I was reading something this morning, actually, one of the ensoulments, and just because I read those that Master Lady Kira Ra has on her website. And one of the things was about the physical body, emotional body, mental body. Was talking about that. And it was really talking about if you can pay attention to your physical body and your emotional body and let them dance together without getting your intellect too involved, everything just flows. And I always make sure that I read something every morning just as a reminder. And it doesn't have to be a lot, it could be just opening up one of my favorite books, go to books, or like the Ensoulment, or something that um, fills you up with positivity, just as a reminder for the day.
I love that. That's a great way to
Yeah.
start your day, right? Because it's just like a
Mhm.
little bit of a orientation point. It gets you sort of situated in that positive energy. And I love that expression actually that you just used about touching things lightly.
Mhm.
For I'm curious exactly what you mean by it, but my takeaway from it when I hear you say that is this idea of moving through the day and sending your intentions out, focusing the energy, and also not grasping onto things. You know, just
Yes.
yeah, just trusting that it's more about the internal state and where we are and checking in and kind of doing little service checks with ourselves throughout the day.
Mhm.
And and then just trusting, because even today, as just before um, our share today, I'm back in Toronto, and there's lots of construction still. They're still working away on it, and it's a very different flow from being in Cozumel, Mexico. And I definitely got trained to that flow there, and I loved it. And now it's time to adapt to being back in Toronto. And the great thing is that I actually brought that flow back with me here, and I
Mhm.
just said, oh, okay, I'm trusting it's all going to unfold, and it did. And it's there's a grace and an ease in that allowing, and,
Yeah. Yeah, touching things lightly is that what I mean? I mean, it's kind of like the ease and flow. And I use that phrase for myself just in the day-to-day world, physical world, but also during meditation. It's a light touch. And it's almost like, I guess you could it's just the being, the no thoughts, just, even like whenever you are going to relax and meditate, just a relaxed state, not a real tight closed eyes or anything like that. Everything's just a really relaxed, just touch lightly.
Yeah, I like that because it also makes me feel reverent when I hear that phrase, like that
Mhm.
idea of with consideration, with that awe and respect,
Mhm.
so for the impact, right? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And not focusing so much, so intently on something, but just touch it lightly and relax and allow some things to come to you too. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many meanings for me with that phrase.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, because that's one of the things too that sometimes we can get so attached to the outcome, and there can be a lot of efforting towards that outcome.
Mhm.
And something that I've been noticing lately too is just I'm curious about, this is the and more part that I'm curious about what you've been noticing this week. For myself, what's been present has been this creating more spaciousness and really allowing, like not rushing, allowing the spaciousness to be there, even though I'm back in the city and there's tons of examples and opportunities to rush around. I
Mhm.
just am saying yes to slowing down, yes to spaciousness, yes to it's all going to happen in divine timing. Like, I still have things that I would like to perhaps complete. And it's more focusing less on the task and more on the flow of where things are going. And like you said, the dance between the emotions and the physical body that you read in the ensoulment. It's, I feel like there's a right now too, sort of energetically, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I was talking with a client this morning about this, that really the energies are really supporting us to, especially in the feminine collective, to really take care of ourselves, to really be in our own energy, and as opposed to sort of sending it out in a million different directions and then having to call it all back. It's like making sure that as we go out into the world after we've cared for ourselves, when we need to be out there, that we're keeping, the way I like to describe it, the way I feel it inside of myself is like that felt sense of what what it feels like in my own inner environment when it's full, when it's nourished, and keeping that close in my heart and with me as I move out into the world. And if it starts to get drained or depleted, even if there's things that need to be done, giving myself permission to stop, pause, check in, and just reboot and renourish, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Have you been noticing anything like that yourself, or something different?
Um, I think that's probably something we all go through quite a bit is to one, giving yourself permission, because I always
Mm-hmm.
have to say I give myself because I have a lot of things I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And then your mind takes over and goes, wait a minute, I got to focus just on this one or just that one. But it's not really true. You can focus, you can have a lot of things you're interested in. I think what's bringing you joy is just like you have to give yourself permission. It's okay if I work on this project, in this project. You know what I mean? You just want to separate um, that into segments. Like I'm working on this project and putting all of your energy towards that, and then moving on to the next. Um, but yeah, I think the pauses throughout the day and giving ourselves permission to slow down because uh, in my life I was such a doer. Got to get this task done. Got to get that task done, and so really bringing that to my own awareness. It's okay to slow down, which I'm pretty good at now. But there's some of those days where you think, oh, or you just want to get task related. What I noticed the other day is I thought, no, there were some projects I wanted to get done, but I can feel my vibration. Like if it's slowing down and it's like, what would I really like to do right now? And this is small, but it was big for my vibration. What I did was I went and I had a picture that I bought for the wall. So that's what I really wanted to do. So I went and did that. And then your vibration raises because you're doing something you want to do. And then what happened that day was then something flowed in that was related to my project. Like I got a message from someone, which was really good. And it seemed like the flow picked up from there because then like, oh, well, this is going to be easy now. And then it just excelled. And then I actually enjoyed doing the project, doing the things that I was needing to do anyway.
Yes. Yes, and that's such a beautiful concrete example, for people listening, because what I heard you saying before too is this idea of sometimes, and I've done it many times myself in the past, of like getting so focused and it has to be completely complete before I can go to anything else. It was very linear, sequential, as opposed to lateral. And I'll do a little bit over here, and then this is calling me over here to come and do that, and then I'll come back to that. I like to call that creative cross-pollinization, right? Where you kind of like a bumblebee buzz from one area to the next, and it does all get done. And I love that example of doing something that following those breadcrumbs, those intuitive breadcrumbs that bring you joy, and then that keeping your frequency and your energy high, and then because sometimes what has happened to me in the past, and I've become much more conscious of it too, is that that sort of pushing on through. I hear a lot of people talking on just push on through to get it done. And then it kind of feels like a burden or a task or heavy. And then by the time you might get it complete, and oftentimes you do because you're pushing on through, but then your energy feels icky, and then you need even more self-care to kind of get yourself back up, climb out of that little mosh pit that you kind of fell into, right? And where I'm at in my own life is it worth it? Because that creates all of this turbulence, right? Energetically, and drag and slag and all this stuff. And it's like, there's a kinder, gentler way, right?
There is. And it's all set up for us if we could just relax and allow, because we've already set our intentions out there. We've already, it's like we already know what we want. We've already set the intentions because we go through these all through our life. We've contrast good. And so we've already went through what do we like, what don't we like? We like this, we don't like that. I mean, our intentions are somewhat already set. We already know. That we may shift and say, okay, this is the project that I want to do, and provide more intention to that because I do that as well. And then don't pay attention to things that I don't want. So those are some of the things that we can do. But the ease and flow, that's opening us up to receive. That's being in the receptive mode of everything that's coming to us. That's the being part. That's how you receive it.
Yes, relaxation is receptivity, right? And when we're in that, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? It's like a paradox where sometimes, there's so much programming around, sort of being faster and faster and more productive. And yet I've noticed in my own life, actually, I'm less productive because I lose that sense of my connection to something larger than myself. That's the divine presence, as I see it. Someone else might, or creative intelligence or something like that. And when I just become almost like a robot, kind of like hammering on and droning through. So it's so much, it feels so much better. And we're meant to notice that, and again, this is where I feel like it's really important also when you were talking before about noticing the different parts of ourselves, is to notice. I've become very sensitive to noticing where my mind comes in, and it loves to make up stories. It loves to say, oh, well, life is like, no, it's not. Thank you, pop up. It's like an internet pop-up. I'm like, "I'm not clicking on that." It's like clickbait.
Yeah,
It's trying to, like, hook me, into,
yeah.
paying attention to it, and it's like, no, thank you." So, it's that's been present too, like, just I don't have to believe every thought I think. It's more important to maintain be aware of my emotional body
Mhm.
and the frequency I'm in and how my physical body feels so that then, you know, it just kind of yeah, I like what you said earlier about that. That helps a lot. So,
Yeah. Yeah, what I've noticed is sometimes whenever whenever I gotta say this, whenever I first started really putting these things into action, like, okay, this is how the law of attraction works. This is how things work. It can seem kind of confusing at first because it seems like things are kind of contradicting, like what they said this, now they're saying that. But it's the application of putting this into your life and then noticing what's happening. And then that's whenever things become more clear on how all of this works for your life, for a person's life. And it's really is it's a balance. It's a balance. It's just this walking this line of balance, but it's really simple too. It's really simple, just not always easy to hold yourself in that frequency of flow and ease because we haven't been taught that.
yeah. So the programs are there, right? That the mind wants to tell us
Mhm.
otherwise, and it's you just have to sort of find the mute button for the mind sometimes,
Yeah,
and
right.
it's interesting too. You said something I just want to emphasize and underscore that I thought was really actually important. You talked about with, noticing, like you set your intentions and you focus on what you want to create, and then you go throughout your day, and it's the noticing we want to pay attention to more than the mind. Like, the
Mhm.
mind is part of the noticing, like noticing what the mind, the emotions, the physical body are offering as feedback loops. It's just I think we sometimes confuse the noticing with the thinking, and I just want to make that discernment for anyone who's listening. Awareness is different than thoughts. Awareness is connected to consciousness, whereas thoughts are literally only of the mental body. So they're only focused on the mental body as the ultimate feedback loop. And it tends to run roughshod in my own experience over the emotional and the physical and the spiritual bodies, which all have
Mhm.
valid, you know. So I sometimes humorously imagine like a boardroom meeting where there's someone who's like, it's my way or the highway, and
Mhm.
then there are the other people just, so it's like, how can there be more of a synchronization, a harmonization that it's about respecting all of the feedback loops and using that to discern what's my next right and perfect step. Does it mean I need to pause, place my hands on my heart, breathe, take a nap, be out in nature, shift gears, and let go of what I was focused on to allow my focus to drift to something else, like you were sharing? And that's the dance, right? It's not a
Mhm.
it's not a dictatorship, it's a dance. So that involves partnership, right?
Mhm. Right, right. The other thing that's coming up for me is that if staying in that present moment, paying attention to the emotional body, physical body, mental body, all of it, if we can stay present, then that's the best scenario, being present with whatever you're doing. But what I've noticed too sometimes is if we are out of whack a little bit with our emotions and what we're thinking, and whenever I say emotions, I'm just talking about like what we're thinking internally, that's our emotions, not outward emotions, not necessarily just what we're feeling and what we're thinking, is that sometimes the dream state can show you where
Mhm.
your emotions were over the day, you know? So, sometimes that affects the dream state as well. It'll give you indicators of what needs to be unwound and back to presence, and I did notice that one day this week, and because I wrote it down, I was like, "Oh," but it's an indicator of it was something that I was contemplating. Should I do this or should I do that? And when you're in those states of indecision, it's like you're creating all of this stuff, and that can show up in other places to let you know. Make a decision and move on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And again, that's a good example of noticing, right? Because if you think about the choices that people have in front of them after they have a dream, they can focus on, oh, I just didn't sleep well, and get wrought up in that, or oh, I had this, there's so many different, choices we have in the presence of that. Or we can just see it as, like you shared, feedback. Okay, I'm noticing I just need to make a decision about something. And that's keeping it simple, right? As opposed to, it's that Mark Twain quote that, I've been through so many different things in my life, and some of them actually even happened. I'm loosely paraphrasing. So it's like, the beautiful thing about being on this inner awakening journey is that you do get to travel later in time. It's a process of like taking the layers of all of this stuff off and just saying, oh my gosh, it's not so complicated. It doesn't have to be so complicated. And that's where I think some of the natural joy comes in too, right? Yeah. The joy of just realizing, because every time that interference pattern, that story that adds a layer of distortion or incongruency or misalignment into the mix, then it's like that actually takes us into a place where we are, it's an opportunity to invite in a clearer sense of, who am I really? Like, it's like, it's almost like if you were dressing up and you put too many accessories on, and you're like, wait a second, people can't even see me anymore. I've got a hat and a scarf and sunglasses and jewelry and necklace and bracelets and whatever else, a million other things. And it's like, wait a second, who am I underneath all of these, layers, right? And so it's interesting how we spend, I think, a good portion of our life adding all those layers on, and then at a certain point in life saying, it's getting a little hot in here. Take some
And
of
all
this.
we have to do is take them off again, right? That's yeah. But it's interesting how life comes around like that. At least that's how my path has been.
Yeah. And oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry. Something just jumped in. I got excited for a second. I didn't mean to talk over you. I apologize. Judgment. It's a judgment-free zone. When I think one of the ways that we allow ourselves to have that experience is to, when we're doing the noticing, is to make sure we're doing the noticing without the judgment. I think that's a really key piece.
Yeah. Self-judgment, I think, is the last thing to let go of. We so quickly judge ourselves. So yeah, that's good. There was something that I wrote down that I was going to share with you, because I thought it was so good that I came across. It was I heard someone say this, that when one is connected to source, they are more powerful than millions who are not.
Yeah,
A million who are not. So we talk a lot about the light, being the light, but that's really what that is all about, is that connection, that source power. And it is very powerful, because not only does it nourish you and your life, because your doubts and your worries, a lot of them dissipate when you can really be present, and of course it's a human life we're living here, so things come in, but we're aware of it and we can take care of that. But that's really powerful for our lives, and the energy that's associated with that is so powerful that it can affect many people around us as well, in a very positive, productive way, and shifting them into believing in themselves as well. It can create that. So I love that because I think that's very true. I mean, I can feel when rooms shift.
Mhm.
People
Definitely.
can see, people who have the psychic ability to see energies can notice when that happens when people walk in, you know. So that's really important. There was another something else that I wrote down. I thought, oh, that's good. I have to write that down. I'll get back to it. So when I can find it in my notes here. The on the chapter Power Bait Leaky Buckets, the last part of it was all about water again.
It
So
was. That was
yeah.
interesting.
And I really loved the experiment she did with someone meditating on a jar full of water, meditating just one word, focusing that word and that vision into the water. And then they would put down the word and wrap it around the jar. And then other people would come in and try to determine what imprints were in that water, what was the word that was there. And people were able um, to to know what the word was. And I thought that would be a fascinating, fun experiment to do with people. We should do that.
We should, yes. Actually, we could do it actually on one of the shows, now that you mention
Yeah,
it. We could
yeah.
prepare the water ahead of time and then just actually, that's a great idea. I love that. It was just, because I feel like the more we as we awaken that we practice and have fun, let it be light, let it be playful, play with these practices, the more we it helps us to expand and just trust ourselves more.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's because again we're going beyond just thinking and understanding, we're going into experiencing. And it's when you experience an aha moment as opposed to just think and receive a thought that's an aha, that's a very different kind of activation, and remembrance,
Hmm.
because it and then it makes it easier, I found too, for all the other stuff. It starts to just start to drop away and peel away on its own. The other thing that sort of popped in for me too, as you were sharing about, being that light, and when you walk into a room and it shifts the room, that's something too. Just it's not something, when we're on an inner awakening journey, we don't have to try to be that person. We don't need to, because sometimes I feel like when people feel like their first awakening, there's sort of an internal pressure that I can say this and not that, and it's sort of, I think it's a phase that everyone probably moves through, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is part of the process, and it's all good and it's all okay. It's just what starts to happen is just being. I love how Master Lady Kira Ra expresses it: response able, able to respond. And it starts with being able to be aware of ourselves and what's happening in ourselves. And because what everyone else is thinking, what everyone else is perceiving is really none of our business, right? There's that
Right.
famous book with that title.
Mhm.
And so it's more important. And that also helps us to let go of the Velcro of the when we walk into environments. It's like really reminding ourselves that, everyone's allowed to have their experience, and if someone's, moving through a different frequency band than the one we're in, we can notice what we're noticing and then make a choice based on that without needing to make the other person right or wrong, good or bad, or ourselves right or wrong or good or bad. We can just
Mhm.
simply, as the saying, kind of live and let live, in the sense of just understanding, um, not even understanding, but receiving the gift of awareness, and using it to continue the dance and the navigation. Yeah.
Everyone has the right to be. I think
Yes, I
that's
like
right.
that. Yeah.
Everyone has the right to be. And so that's always a good one to hold on to. noticing without judgment. And right, no one's right or wrong, and there's really no reason talking about like opinions on things like that, because it only matters like what are you thinking about you and your life, like how do you feel about yourself. Self-care, that's why self-care is so important too. That's why we always say self-care is so important, because you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of you before you can take care of other people. Otherwise, you'll get depleted.
Exactly.
And it's
And
not
you'll look,
selfish. It's not selfish to think about yourself and to make sure that you're taken care of physically, emotionally, things of that nature.
yeah. And I'll find too in my own journey, like I'll look for, if I'm not managing my self-care, then it's like, it's so easy. And I've seen this with other people too, and clients I've worked with, that it's sort of, again, it's because of old subconscious programs that are beneath the radar system
Mm-hmm.
of our mind. We'll look to get our needs met through, giving to someone else to fill our cup, rather than filling our cup from within first,
Mm-hmm.
and then letting the overflow pour out to benefit other people. So it goes back to just, wherever we are, just, you said it earlier on, and it's always stuck with me. And I just love the way you express it. It was just, we only have one job and one job only, and that's to keep our frequency high. And
Mm-hmm.
it's true. And it's just be that light. And when that becomes normal and natural, it's not a posturing, it's just a state of being, and it's just how we experience ourselves from the inside out, then there's nothing we need to do really, even, or have. It's just about moving through life with that grace and that trust and that surrender and that intention. And and it gives permission for other people to do the same. They may not,
Mm-hmm.
it just shines a light of what's possible, and it it continues to expand, because again, everything's interconnected, to go back to my very first point at the beginning of this.
Yeah. So to keep our frequency high should be very easy, right? Because you have self-confidence, you have self-love, you have self-care, you are kind to other people, you just give love, life is joyful. I mean, that should be easy for everybody. Why do we make it so hard?
Yeah.
And that's when your frequency rises. That's whenever you can be in good health, because your body's going to be in better health because of that, because you're balanced, all your physical and energy bodies are balanced. Um, and that's when you're in the receptive mode to receive all the abundance.
Yeah.
So we just have to be happy.
Yes. Yes. It's an inside job for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Was
I
there
really,
anything else with the chapter that stuck out to you?
uh, I think we've covered a lot of things.
I have one more thing highlighted that I'd
Okay.
like to share. And this was on page 136 of, what is it, chapter 13 we're on? Yeah. Um, One of the Rusty Roy had been intrigued by the fact that historically, water has been central in important rituals. Besides being physically necessary to life, since ancient times, water has been closely associated with the psyche, intuition, and healing. And I just thought that was important, because water has always been a part of, blessings, and we're seeing here scientifically, you can see that you can put imprints and impressions within water. And there's all sorts of studies out there, right? I think we've touched on it before. It's no doubt water holds these energies and these frequencies, and we can do that with our thoughts. We can do that with music. We can do that, with all sorts of different things. So, yeah, water is important.
I like that. That's a great point to end on. And you just sparked something in me too, as you shared that water helps us to remember that the illusion is that there's any separation, right? Because it's it's all just one big flow. You have an ocean which is comprised of many different water molecules or drops of water, and yet it's the unity of it all together as the allness. So it's interesting that water is always used in the rituals, sacred rituals, because I feel like it's almost like that reminder of the oneness that we all truly are a part of,
Yeah.
and come from.
Mhm.
So
Water. And we can do this at home. Just, you can put your hands around a glass of water and just send loving intentions to it. And you've already increased the frequency in that water. And when you drink it, it's better for your body. So there's all
yeah,
sorts of things we can do.
love
All
that.
right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Pollyanna. We should also mention that we do have the landing page completed. It's at
Good.
meetthelight.com / power of 8. So if anybody wants to join us to be as a participant in the power of 8, Pollyanna and I will guide you on how we do those intention experiments. I don't know if we should even call it an experiment anymore because it's true. It happens. But if anybody would like to be a participant in a group of 8, the power of 8, please just fill out that form and we'll be in contact with you. If you or anyone you know is in need of healing, we will be taking one participant, one healee each week that the power of 8 group will focus upon. And this is a free service. So this is our service to everyone. So if you want to participate, or if you know someone who wants to get the healing intention sent to them, just go and fill out that form, and we'll be in contact with you.
Yes, we're very much looking forward to sharing that with you. And what popped into my mind, Jennifer? Why don't we call it an intention circle?
Intention circle. I like that. Yes, that's good.
Well,
Okay.
I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you everyone for your presence, whether you were watching this live or on the replay. We were so happy that you're here, and remember to join us next week, same time, same channel, when we're going to be talking about what's the title of the next chapter. I'm going to take a peek. Chapter 14, the Twin Towers of Peace. That sounds interesting.
All right. We'll see everybody next Wednesday, same time. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Pollyanna. It's a pleasure as always.